This is the Pennyworth podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we are on Season 2, Episode 3 of Pennyworth, the Belt and Welt.
Aren't you? Up there looking down on all of us, seeing what everyone's up to.
You think I'm sitting on a cloud in a white nightie, do you? Playing a midget harp?
Well, yeah, something like that.
That's a very childish notion of death you've got there, son. Maybe I'm not even dead. Did you see a body? Maybe I'm in America, eating hamburgers on a beach.
Are you?
A minced meat sandwich? Disgusting idea. And as to who stole your money, well, as a general rule, it's nearly always trusted colleagues, or friends, or family that buggy you, as I found to my own cost.
That's not fair. I didn't...
Welcome back, fellow governors. This is the Pennyworth podcast, and we are on episode 3 of season 2, The Belt and Welt. I am one of your hosts, John.
I'm one of your other hosts, Derek. Or your other host, Derek. There's only two of us in this show.
Exactly.
I keep forgetting there's only two of us that do
We are a
Pennyworth.
couplet.
Yes, we are. Welcome back. Yes, interestingly, this episode is part 1 of the 2-part mid-season finale of Pennyworth. We should have known about this. It was announced back in October that there would only be 3 weeks of Pennyworth, and I completely forgot when we were scheduling our podcast. But so on this episode, we are going to just cover episode 3 of season 2, The Belt and Welt. We've been good enough not to watch episode 4, so in all of our speculation that might come out of this episode, we haven't seen episode 4, so whatever way you're watching the show, we won't spoil what happens in episode 4, because we don't know right now. And also, and we're going to talk spoilers for episode 3 here, I think this episode is important enough to have its own discussion podcast.
Absolutely.
We lose a major character here. You can't just
absolutely
cover that over and not talk about it in depth. So that's why we're going to do season 2, episode 3 right now. In this episode, we will have our podcast about episode 4 out later this week. If you have any thoughts on both of the episodes, please email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com or pop over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries and share your thoughts over there.
Yes, and of course you can subscribe to us over on tvpodcastindustries.com, or you can go on any good or evil, or dare I say straight-laced or groovy podcast player of your choice, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts. You name it, we are on there. Just please search TV Podcast Industries or the Pennyworth Podcast. And also, please share and support the podcast. Rate us, leave a review, because sharing the podcast is, of course, sharing the old festive love.
Mm-hmm. Yes, happy Christmas, everybody. Yes, of course, if you celebrate Christmas. It happened on the 25th, a bit of a weird one this year, with everybody in Ireland and the UK going back into lockdown anyway. And I know it's been very different in many countries, what's been happening over this year's Christmas. But I hope you enjoyed the holidays. I hope you got some time off with your family and your friends, and hopefully you got some time to spend with them, or at the very least got to watch some good TV over the last couple of days.
Yeah, and of course, just to remember that we will this festive podcast on all things Pennyworth will be coming back in another religious festival when the second part of season 2 comes back in March.
Okay,
so yeah, we will go from Jingle Bells to Easter Bunnies.
That's true.
For our coverage of the second half, or the remaining 6 episodes of Pennyworth season 2.
That's right. I was wondering where you were going with that. Yes,
I know.
Yes, the announcement came out this week with the second half trailer for the season. It came out that the second half of the season will come out in March. That's right, John. But as I said earlier on, we will be back with our episode 4 podcast later this week before New Year's, let's say. Do you want to get into it, John?
Yes, let's get into our spoiler-filled review of episode 3, The Belt and Welt.
What could that be in reference to?
Probably getting belted and then getting a welt.
Well, yes. So if you get hit by a leather belt, you would usually end off with a welt, with a kind of a mark on your body after that's happened to you. I think in this episode, because of Archbishop Potter's storyline in this episode, there is partly to do with punishment, or people punishing themselves with using leather belts to hit themselves. Potentially it's reference to him. There is some punishment here for Dave Boy's loose lips, let's say.
Yeah, sink ships.
Yeah, so potentially...
Or causes explosions.
Yeah. Exactly. So potentially it's something it's to do with that. But once again, we do have episode titles this season, as we mentioned, something that we're enjoying exploring what they could possibly be a reference to. This episode wasn't actually written by Bruno Heller, the showrunner, who wrote the first 2 episodes. The episode was written by Jimmy Dowdall. He's worked on a lot of shows in the UK, including Shameless. I think he had 4 or 5 episodes, but he worked on the show for years. A pretty massive show, and I think it's on its 13th season of the remake, the US version of Shameless as well. So very long running show in the US and in the UK.
Yeah, exactly. Originally starting off in the UK on a council estate in Manchester.
That's right. Yeah, pretty much spent all the time on the council estate in Manchester.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
But yes, Jimmy comes over to us. Lots of nice little bits of humour in here. So I wonder if him coming on board brought some of the humour to this show as well. The episode was directed by Rob Bailey. We've talked about Rob Bailey so many times. He's worked on so much stuff with Bruno Heller and Danny Cannon, including Gotham, where he directed 11 episodes of that show. These episodes included The Turning Point for Gotham, which was Penguin's Umbrella, which was season 1, episode 7.
That was
John,
a big one.
you remember that, where kind of the audience has started to trail off thinking this is just going to be another show, and then suddenly you get this.
Yeah, that was a
turn.
big episode. Yeah. And in some ways then I think it's right that Rob Bailey got this episode, because let's just say, as we've been calling the 3 lads, the boys, the gang of Dave Boy, Bazza and Alfie, then big repercussions for these 3 in this episode.
Yeah, big episode to be directing. Rob Bailey also directed the finale of Gotham, season 5, episode 12, the final ever episode of Gotham as well. So trusted hands for Danny Cannon and Bruno Heller. This is the 3rd episode of Pennyworth he also directed. We've talked about him last season when he directed episode 5 and episode 9 of season 1.
Yeah, so he's a real collaborator with Danny Cannon and Bruno Heller, for sure.
And I love his work. I love his work on these shows as well. Really, really good. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for the episode?
Sure. A bomb explodes on Micklewhite Avenue outside the Pennyworth house. While Alfie gets a visitation from his late father, his mom helps a wounded girl back to health and rediscovers her purpose in life. Meanwhile, Alistair Crowley's manipulation of Prime Minister Archbishop Potter is complete, as the holy man is captured in a compromising position with multiple sexual partners. Misses. Potter takes his own life, leaving the way clear as planned by the CIA. Sykes finally makes contact with an appreciative Lord Harwood, who arranges for her retrieval, but Frances Gaunt is concerned that Bet's uncontrollable nature puts the Raven Union's cause at risk. Following the crushing loss of their travel fund, Alfie falsely accuses Captain Gulliver Troy of betraying them, but Gully offers the boys a job to make back their lost earnings. Back at Delaney's, Dave Boy realises that his drinking has caused their problems. After bragging about their windfall to another group of drinkers at the bar, the nefarious group concocted their extortion plan. When Bazza, Dave Boy and Alfie confront the thieves, it all gets out of hand and costs Bazza his life in an accidental explosion. Will Dave Boy recover from his part in the death of his best friend?
That is the big question I have at the end of this episode. This is a shocking death for Baz. I think probably because the show really has built up this idea of the Raven Union versus the English League, with Alfie and the boys kind of somewhere in the middle, kind of running different missions and different operations going on. Losing one of your main 3 characters on the good side, I suppose, on your protagonist side, let's say, like Bazza, in this episode, the way that he's lost to some guys that just robbed some money off them, and it's an accidental explosion to kill him. You know, in season 1, we saw Esme Winnicus, Alfie's partner, dying, and him kind of going on a revenge path for the whole season. This time, there's nobody to go and take revenge out on for Alfie. This is all the fault of Dave Boy and his drinking, right? So I think that's where we're going to start, is talking about Alfie and the boys. But that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. What's going to happen with Dave Boy? Because he knows this was all caused by him, and it's all an accident that gets Bazza killed.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's the death of Bazza. For me, this is a really sad day. Loved Bazza. He was the cool, level, chilled, one of the three.
Yeah.
You know, he had the plan. He was always kind of getting the job done. You know, you had Dave Boy's wild, drinking. You had him effectively, you know, being the one that could undermine their particular, operational mission at the time. And I think Bazza was that steady ship for Alfie.
Yeah.
And seeing him go, it's really sad, day, I think. It's a massive moment for the series, I think, to be honest, breaking up effectively with the death of Bazza, Alfie and his two boys. And I think that, you know, you know, part of me is like, wow, they did that. That's really good. It's really sad that Bazza, you know, I really like the character.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would have loved for these three to have kept going, or at least, you know, maybe towards the end of this season. Now we don't know where it's necessarily going to go. Will Alfie be in America by the end of this season? Because it all, with this money, to get to America, it's all leading to that. But I would really, in my heart, I think I wish Bazza was still alive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was still the three guys, going about doing their missions. But certainly, as you're saying, it's a really interesting way of doing it, that, you know, you have effectively the loose lips sink ships element from Dave Boy to a group of, I suppose, scallywags, sort of, I think, travelers actually, that run a fairground. He gets drunk, spills the beans about all this money, and they're the ones that kidnap, Alfie's mother. And in coming to, you know, once Dave Boy remembers all this from the fog of whiskey and other alcoholic drinks, that they chase down it's Vic Dobson, who is at Delaney's, is a regular at Delaney's.
Yeah.
But it is also that, there's a great sequence here, a great fight sequence in the Hall of Mirrors between, Alfie and Vic. I thought that was so nicely done, really good. I mean, you know, no fairground chase would be what it is without a trip to the Hall of Mirrors.
Oh, we saw a pretty big one in Gotham.
No, exactly.
Between Bruce Wayne and the proto-Joker.
It really does hark back to the Joker and Gotham with the fairground scene. Although it's more like a storage area for these rides whilst they're not touring, it looked. But it's also, ultimately, Alfie gets the money back, but is injured, and it's Sherry that takes off with the money, and it's Sherry who takes their car to escape with all this money. I don't know where she thinks she's going. They know who she is. They know it's her.
Yeah, for 20 grand, she could pretty much go anywhere.
Exactly. But what I mean is she's got to, you know, they know who she is. They know where she lives. So while she's getting everything together, they can go after her pretty much.
She can buy
and
new
it's the
clothes
middle of a war-torn city, so she can't just go anywhere.
She can,
so,
with that kind of money, but she has to navigate around to 2 or 3 canisters of gasoline, which seem to be more of the problem than getting away from them.
But that's it. It's like the car gets taken out and she crashes into these canisters and it explodes, and Bazza is chasing after the car because it's his car.
Yeah.
And actually, I didn't think he had died initially because it's just from the back.
Yeah.
And I just thought he'd gone down on his knees holding with his arms up because it was like, my beautiful car.
Exactly, yeah.
And then it cuts to him with this huge stomach wound that he ultimately dies of. And I was just like, oh no.
He has died from this, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's definitely dead.
Because we have seen Dave Boy shot, I think, 5 times now since the first episode of the first season. We've seen him shot maybe 3 to 5 times. I couldn't get the exact number, and he's recovered every time, and almost all the time pretty quickly as well. So, whereas Bazza here with his innards hanging out on the ground, and as I say, this peed me off. To be honest, I'm not too sure whether I'm very happy with this particular death, because it doesn't play into the overall storyline. Effectively, the only thing that it plays into is they've now lost their 20 grand. It doesn't play into the storyline of what's happening in England. It doesn't play into the battle between the good and evil that Alfie's caught up in between. It just plays into...
It's randomers in a bar
exactly.
have done a heist on Alfie,
yeah.
and Bazza is the collateral damage of that. It doesn't even feed into the fact that maybe Gully, we see Alfie thinking it's actually Gully and his team.
We said that last week as well, last episode.
But maybe it is. Maybe he's just boxing clever that he got the people in the bar to have that conversation. I mean, I'm just saying, like, even if it were to be something connected with Gully, like Gully put Vic up to it.
Yeah. Maybe.
And so then there is, as you say, some kind of revenge mission, because ultimately the revenge mission needs to be on Dave Boy, because he's the one that ultimately brought all of this about. And no, I agree. I think it's a shame it's not part of a bigger sort of story arc or one of the existing story arcs that we have. And maybe it is. Maybe we've just not seen it all yet. And maybe episode 4 will provide that. But I think, this is a big move here in the story by removing one of Alfie's lieutenants effectively, and a real damn good one as well. I love this character.
Absolutely.
I do like, in a sense, his death speech, where because he knows he's dying, he goes, well, you must become fat to Alfie and have a fat wife and have fat kids and become fat and bald to Alfie. That's his dying wish for Alfie, is that if you're going to get to America, well then I want you to kind of look ugly in the beautiful world, that is America. I think Dave Boy just needs to brush his teeth to probably get the whiff of alcohol off his breath.
You need to brush your teeth more and tell Doris Day ... Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, he dies on his final speech to Dave Boy. But no, I think what he's saying to Alfie is that he thinks if he gets to America and gets away from all this, he can just let himself go. He doesn't have to be on tenterhooks all the time and tense all the time. He can just relax, have a wife and kids, and let himself go completely. He doesn't need to be the kind of Alfie that he is in London, I suppose. So it feels like Bazza, while it's very funny what he's saying, it feels like he's actually saying to him, you need to chill out, man, and you need to get yourself to a place where you feel safe and relax. So yeah, a great moment. Love the character, love the actor in the show. Really sad to see Bazza go in the way that he did, though. That's where I'm peed off at the moment. Deaths in shows, especially where you have this kind of ensemble cast, they're always difficult to kind of navigate, how you feel about them in some ways, especially someone that we liked in the show. The one thing that we know is that Alfred Pennyworth becomes the butler for the Wayne family, and he's pretty much alone most of his life and serves out his life living in Gotham, in Wayne Manor, serving the family. We don't know anything about any of his other family, even throughout Gotham in the 5 years that we're there. We heard about stories about him when he's a young man, which is what's represented in the show Pennyworth. But he doesn't really have a huge amount of friends around him, at least in comic books and in what we've seen in Gotham. So you kind of know that Dave Boy and Bazza weren't going with him to America to set up their whole group when they went over there. But to have Bazza taken away like this at this time in the show is a real surprise, I think.
Yeah. I think so. Like, even if it was on a proper mission, you could see that really kind of connecting in. And I suspect it would make it even more meaningful. Yeah. But this was a big shock.
Maybe that's
the
trope.
Day.
Yeah, maybe that's the trope they were trying to avoid. But I think because we've had so many big missions where Dave Boy has gotten shot in pretty bad situations and has survived, it feels even worse that we've got the one place where Bazza gets killed.
Yeah.
It's something that doesn't really mean that much. It's just money.
Yeah. And they've lost the 20,000 that went up in the fireball, as well as Sherry. They've lost a waitress at Delaney's bar.
Is that why it was so explosive? Because Sherry's flammable? Is that why?
Well, she may have had a few bottles of something with her on her, just to, her sort of superhero juice.
She did work at a bar, and you do spill a lot when you work in a bar. I know when I've worked at a bar, I've come out smelling of alcohol quite significantly, so maybe that was it as well.
Well, that's it. I mean, it even feels as though because Sherry went with them, because she knew where he was?
Yeah.
Was she in on it in some way?
Remember, the reason why they found out is because Vic Dobson bought the 500 quid ring for her.
Yeah.
So as an engagement gift. So yes, she was definitely in it. This is the person that she was going to marry, basically. So
yeah.
Now that was the kind of bone of contention. Dave Boy kind of feels like he should have been with Sherry. So, but she has accepted the ring from Vic Dobson, so she's become engaged to him, I guess. But yeah, an interesting one. Yeah, I guess we won't know much more about Sherry, in the future. And we don't really know if this is going to play into the overall story.
Well, I certainly think that's what I'm really interested to see in episode 4. Maybe some of the later episodes is, how to create some more meaning of this death of Bazza.
Yeah.
And also just to see I suppose the mournfulness of Alfie and Dave Boy, in respect to Bazza's death. As I say, I'm still intrigued whether Gully had something to do with it, even though he actually swears blindly that he didn't. But, it was just that cold welcome from Gully's men when he turns up at this garage where they have their base. You're kind of just going, well, okay, Gully can put on a face and hide what he's thinking, but it really looked like his gang, his group, couldn't. Like, they were really eyeing them suspiciously.
Like, remember, this is a secret hideout. The only way that Alfie got the details of where Gully is, even though he knows him, is by going to his wife, and his wife shared the information, So there's also a little bit of tension created there, possibly, given that his wife has given directions to Alfie to go and see Gully. This is supposed to be their secret hideout, so potentially some more there with Gully's wife in future, as to how Alfred got the information out of her. So, yeah.
So,
do you think that's it on Alfie and the boys for this episode, John?
I think it is. R.I.P. Bazza.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing probably we haven't mentioned about the Alfie side of the story, really, and I don't know whether this fits in with any of our other points, but it's just about Alfie's mom. We finally get her first name, which is amazing that we've gone through almost 2 seasons and we haven't heard her first name is Mary, so it's Mary Pennyworth. And that we had that amazing opening sequence on their street, effectively, as she's outside and the bombs start to drop. We see the bells of St. Paul's ringing out as a bomb explodes inside the cathedral.
Crashing out.
Crashing out.
Actually, that whole mortar assault on the City of London, that was pretty epic.
Wasn't it?
I thought that was really so well done. I loved the visual.
Once again, Kosef VFX, who've been doing all of the work with Bruno Heller and Danny Cannon right back to Gotham, pulling out all the stops to create this kind of world of London and see what it's like in the 60s of this DC world with explosions going on.
Like I thought this was going to be an all-on Raven Union attack. Now it was just sort of the day-to-day mortar bombardment to weaken the positions, weaken morale and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, if they're doing a shot like that at the opening of episode 3, when the Union Army, the Raven Union Army does kind of begin to, jackboot it into London, I really hope they do a great wide shot, because that mortar hitting the dome of St. Paul's Cathedral, you just hear the kind of clang of the bells as they're taken out. It was really, really nicely
Absolutely.
done.
And just for our foreign listeners, for our American listeners, John, St. Paul's Cathedral is most well known because
it's primarily for the wedding of Prince Charles and Diana back in the 80s.
Yes.
Like, normally it would be in Westminster Abbey. I think a few of them have had it in the chapel at Windsor Castle, but Charles and Diana selected St. Paul's for their wedding rather than Westminster Abbey, where also you have the coronation of the monarch as well.
So a very famous cathedral in London. It's just really weird that we're talking about Diana and Prince Charles there, because again, Esme from season 1 of Pennyworth, the actress who played Esme, is currently playing Diana in The Crown
exactly.
on Netflix.
It's modelled on St. Peter's in the Vatican.
St. Paul's is,
and
not the Crown.
and like, it was built by Sir Christopher Wren, I think after the Great Fire of London when the original cathedral there was burnt down. So they did this, huge, edifice. But there's a great, if you're able ever to go there in the dome, they have, it's called the Whispering, Gallery, because you can be on either side of the dome and you just whisper to the left and you pick up what the other people are saying on the other side. So you hear all manner of crazy stuff, in that, cathedral.
Excellent. Not anymore. Not in the world of Pennyworth. Unfortunately.
Well, you can socially distance as well. At least you could just stand there and talk with whatever that span is. But it's more than 2 meters. That's
true. But again, not in the world of Pennyworth. It no longer exists because it has been blown out of the water. But very interesting, John. Listeners, I did just have to point out to John when he was describing the whispering wall that he can't whisper when he's on mic, or else you can't hear him.
That's true.
No, don't do it. Don't do it. Let's get on to the Raven Union, our second kind of major section for our Pennyworth discussions, I suppose. And really what's going on in here is Beth Sykes finally getting in contact with Lord Harwood.
Yeah, finally. After, as she says, being chased by Rozzers all over the Midlands because of what she did to a superior officer, her and Catherine finally, after being on that run, find a safe harbour in one of Catherine's former lecturers, Dorian Burbank, who's an artist and lecturer and teacher. Yeah. I think Bet has issues here with the artistry that he does, thinking it's all of women. So he must be a bit like a Peeping Tom or a Lech. That he's only painting these women, in order to get a good look, basically.
Right.
And so she's really not that, sort of, she's not too welcoming of Dorian Burbank at all.
Well, there is also that thing with Beth always, that there's a jealousy of her, of anybody else that gets in her way to what she wants. And in here, we kind of feel like we hear it specifically from Catherine that while Beth scares her, she knows that Beth wants to be her friend. So she thinks the easiest way to not get killed by Beth, basically, is to keep being her friend. So that is the kind of conundrum of being around Beth. No matter what you do, she can flip out and can go crazy in different
hero to zero very quickly with Beth Sykes, I think, from being someone who she absolutely is looking up to, except for her family with Peggy. Peggy knows how to deal with her, you know, or it's, I'm going to kill you, basically. There's really not a lot of grey areas with Beth Sykes.
Like even last season, we saw her with the Queen, thinking the Queen was cheating at a family board game, basically. So, nobody is beyond her scope. But you kind of see it with Beth. She is interested in art. You kind of heard that when she met Catherine first. I think she likes the freedom. I think I mentioned this in episode 1. She likes the freedom of somebody that could be focusing on art with everything else going on in the world. So she's kind of attracted to Catherine because of that, because she's a free person that is focused on art. And we do see in this episode confirmation that Catherine is an artist, because we see her making her first drawing of Beth.
Which is really good. We see that she is actually an artist, She
hasn't been lying the whole time.
No, exactly.
So, or she could be a resistance fighter who's also an artist, of course. But,
but it ultimately gets lost on Beth. She doesn't see it because the Union police have arrived at Dorian's house and just begin firing at her. And we have this really interesting element at the HQ for the Raven Union with Lord Harwood, where Beth finally manages to get hold of him. He is still very much an admirer of her and thankful for her helping him to escape from the league, the New Name League at the time, or the government, I should say, the original government.
Yes, from the previous Prime Minister. Yeah.
But he does realize that she can be a liability, and he realizes it's not really a great thing that she killed her superior officer and then went on the run from the Raven Union, effectively.
Yeah, I do like his response of, can't keep doing this, because you feel like in the last year there's been a few instances where she may have killed one of her superior officers or other officers or anybody that might have annoyed her, anybody that didn't have or tried to give her a scone without any currants in it, maybe.
Yeah, and I think scone. But I think while Lord Harwood has this soft spot for Bet Sykes, it is most apparent from the exchange once Frances Gaunt and Captain Salt hear of her contacting Harwood that they do not. They see that her actions compromise the Raven Union, that she's a bit of a loose cannon, that she could, again, be either all in, fully loyal to the Raven Union, or their worst enemy, whichever way. And so I suspect then that these Union police that have been sent there to pick her up with orders to fire on her immediately and probably take her out, are at the orders of Gaunt, Frances Gaunt.
Maybe, yeah. Or if Salt potentially got stuck his wicket in there, I suppose, maybe. So but it is interesting how people justify themselves, and that's why I suppose that's what's interesting in the hierarchy of the Raven Union here. We see it a bit in the English League as well, but in the Raven Union we have someone like Salt who's kind of agreeing that Bet's a little bit off the reservation, yet he's effectively setting up a mass murdering weapon, a weapon of mass destruction, effectively. You have Frances Gaunt, who's kind of thinking, we're above all this. We're trying to bring the country back to its greater self. But again, they've been running around killing people all across the country and taking over land and bombing major cities. She seems to be okay with that, but Bet's a step too far because she killed one person, that kind of way, Well, and then we have the third element, obviously, with Lord Harwood, who is completely respectful of the fact that without Bet, he would not be alive today.
Exactly.
So there are the kind of three elements in there. Salt, obviously, at a lower level, he isn't involved in the leadership of this party, but potentially he could be siding with Gaunt against Harwood, or of course Harwood and Salt could be working together on Project Stormcloud and go back against Gaunt, and how she manages.
Yeah, it's an interesting one where Salt is in this, because you definitely get the impression that, like Frances Gaunt, he sees Bet as unstable. Yeah. Yet I wouldn't have put those two as together, as working together then to get Bet Sykes. And so maybe this is an underhand play by Salt to appear as though he's working with Gaunt or agreeing with her that Bet Sykes is too unstable to be in or have the ear of that Lord Harwood, but ultimately will then betray her when and if Lord Harwood hears of this attack. I mean, the other thing is what Bet thinks of this. Does she feel that it is Lord Harwood? So that's it. It's, for her, Lord Harwood is now the enemy, is dead. Is it that he has sent these police around to kill her and fire on her, because she effectively hightails it out of the safe house with Catherine in tow? So she's going to feel betrayed here, and will she pin that on Lord Harwood?
Maybe.
And, this is kind of an interesting little fallout piece that will happen with Lord Harwood and the Raven Union upper command, I reckon.
Yeah, absolutely. Be interesting stuff. Let's go on to our final section about the English League. I think that's it for the Raven Union from this episode. Mostly focused on Alfie and the boys a lot of this episode. So the English League side of it really is about what's going on with Prime Minister Archbishop Potter as one of the leaders of the English League. Even though it's not to do with anything to do with the Raven Union, this is a plan from the CIA to take them down. We see Alistair Crowley's temptations have worked on the Prime Minister. Maybe. I'm not convinced here. I'm not too sure because of how it plays out. You see some kind of looks from Archbishop Potter when Alistair Crowley's saying to him, I want you to come and meet my friends and talk them off the ledge like you've talked me off the ledge, kind of thing. You see some little looks from Archbishop Potter, and I'm not sure whether to read that he is really interested in maybe finding some of the more titillating sides and the temptations that Alistair Crowley is able to bring to him. I'm not sure whether that's a definite thing, or whether this is simply that Crowley has perverted him in some way with drugs or drink and gotten the photograph out of it, because we didn't see anything in the lead up to it. We saw him going to meet his friends, and then we see him waking up surrounded by all the naked bodies of men and women, that he potentially had some kind of, relationship with, some or all of them.
Well, that's it. I guess with what happened with Thomas Wayne in season 1, where he was effectively drugged with an hallucinogen, Martha. So this could have been a similar thing that transpires for Archbishop Potter. Now we don't see any of it, but I guess that's the way that Crowley operates, and would have gotten Archbishop Potter to be compliant to either partake or effectively just to drug him to then lay the diaspora of naked bodies around him for the friendly, photograph right at the end.
But that's what I'm wondering, whether it's compliant or complicit, I suppose.
It doesn't matter.
Two very different things.
It's the photograph is all important, which, you have the moment where Frances Gaunt is saying, he was a nice man, but effectively there's no leadership here, with the English League. Will it be the Queen or will it be John Ripper that will ultimately take Potter's place as the leader and Prime Minister of the English League?
Or Inspector Aziz, maybe?
Or Inspector Aziz. Yeah. But I think the interesting thing here is it does go pretty dark. It's not like he just resigns and then becomes a recluse in the church, atoning for his perceived sins with this orgy, real or not. But instead, it shows him committing suicide. Which, takes it to a really dark place here. And I think that's one of the good things about, Pennyworth, is that actually there's an awful lot of darkness in this, that's mixed in. And I think it really packs an oomph, because it does straddle a nice line between, the weird, wonderful, crazy, funny, dark funny, or darkly funny, I should say. And then just, this moment with Potter taking his own life because of, the complete, trashing of his position, his reputation, whether for real or not. And I think the other great thing that comes out of this is right at the start of this episode, we have a little conversation between Martha and Alfie, which is really nice. And Alfie effectively lets her know that Alistair Crowley was in Delaney's with Thomas Wayne. And so she knows this, and then Martha, with the death of Archbishop Potter, learns of Crowley's involvement there in Potter's disgrace and ultimate suicide, and confronts Thomas Wayne there with a slap.
That's right.
Knowing that he has been put up to this by the CIA, and that, effectively, in no uncertain terms, makes it quite clear to Thomas Wayne that he has led to the death of this actually nice man. Yeah. Which is another nice little complication here that's been brought in.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it just makes me wonder, because I do want to know really just about this character of Archbishop Potter. Was he a nice man that was hiding some deep, dark secrets, or was he a nice man who got perverted by Alistair Crowley, or was he a nice man who got drugged by Alistair Crowley and had a photograph in a compromising position taken of him?
Yeah,
they're all different things, and I just wonder, in a world like the worlds that Bruno Heller and Danny Cannon create, where everybody's grey, nobody is good or bad, everybody's grey, was Archbishop Potter a person who was good, who has been manipulated to look bad? Because that bit doesn't seem to have come out in the episodes that we've seen so far this season.
And also that he was a nice man who liked a bit of tickle your fancy, and was also still a good man despite that.
Yeah. I
mean, it's a very old assertion that because of, maybe sexual arousement or something like that, that all of a sudden you're a bad person just because you are wearing a dog's collar.
Well, I do feel the Archbishop and Prime Minister of the country, leader of the church, has a slightly different benchmark that has to be set for them as to who they are in their private and public lives. I think that's kind of what I wanted to know. Was there something in his private life that he hid, Or was this simply, he didn't have a private life that he was hiding because he is as good as he's supposed to be for this role? That's all.
Yeah, I suppose it depends whether he's sort of Anglican or Catholic.
It does, potentially. Anyway, that's kind of it for the English League as well, and the Raven Union, and Alfie and the boys. Or anything else from the episode that you want to talk about, John?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the few things I really liked Alfie's interaction with his dad, whether it was a dream or a memory or kind of some kind of hallucination just after the bomb had dropped. Like he's in bed, so I guess it's some kind of dream.
Yeah.
But
well, this happened throughout season 1 as well, so this is the kind of continuation of Alfie's visions.
Yeah, it's the flashbacks.
It's a vision more like, because his father looks like he's just walked out of that bomb from the end of season 1, because he's got all of his clothes are torn, he's got blood still on him, he's got what looks like the aftermath of the explosion on him. Basically.
He's looking pretty beat up. But yeah, I kind of like this because, you know, both his mum up until this episode has been, but she still is very down on Alfie going to the US, and she certainly doesn't want to. And here we get from his dad's side where that, you know, he questions Alfie's loyalty to England because he just wants to run away, and he has these USA dreams, I suppose. But I think the surreal thing is then he leaves via the window by kind of just jumping out of it.
Yeah, getting some Game of Thrones reminders.
Yeah, it did really. With King Tommen chucking himself out the window after the great Sept of Baelor has been consumed by dragonfire.
Spoilers for Game of Thrones.
Yeah, well, that is. But but I just like this interaction because, you know, even in his visions, his dad is uncompromising. He's questioning Alfie wanting to leave the country to go to the USA, just like his mother is. So he's kind of getting it from all sides here. Although, you know, Mary Pennyworth, after helping this child that had been injured in that opening mortar attack of this episode, she seems more at peace with what she's doing in London and her role. And so, you know, she can see how she wants to remain and be a part of the life in London, even if Alfie does decide to go to the US.
Exactly. I have it written as she finds her purpose finally.
Yeah, exactly.
Because she's been listless, she's been lost since Mr. Pennyworth died or was killed. I want to just kind of extrapolate it out a little bit, because we have Mr. Pennyworth there, representative of the Raven League in the past, so he was a part of that group. He believed in their goals, he believed in what they thought, so much so that he was willing to kill himself, commit suicide as a suicide bomber to take out some of the leadership of, at the time, the No Name League. I'm wondering whether this episode is setting up that Mary might join the English League to help out the wounded, because the attack on London was from the Raven Union. And she is saving people in London who have been injured by their attack. So I'm wondering if this is setting Mary up as being part of the English League. Like, it's really interesting, you know, seeing how the story is setting up in Pennyworth, who's the good guys and who's the bad guys, you know, like, especially because Alfie's father himself was a member of the Raven Union, believing, you know, British first, go back from monarchy, back away from the church and back away from monarchy, take it back to the people, take it back to the unionization of England, effectively, for the middle class and for the workers of the UK. And now you have possibly his mother going on the other side. It seems like the Raven Union seems to have much more of the traditional DC type villains associated with it, with Harwood and with Beth being associated with the Raven Union. But it seems like the English League are useless. Yeah,
it really does. I mean, I'm surprised they've held out for this long, to be honest. And now with that vacuum, with the death of and suicide of Potter, you're just kind of like going, who is going to fill this void?
Yeah.
You know, at this moment, I would say Martha would be the best bet because she seems to be the most like astute and capable of any of them. But I think John Ripper has plans there to become the Prime Minister.
Potentially. Yeah. And we don't know what his other plans would involve as well. But just some interesting stuff to speculate on. I've got a few notes for this episode because we do need to go back to translating some of the words that are used on Pennyworth, I think, again, John, because you may miss what they are. Beth says she's being chased down by the Rozzers.
Yes.
Yeah, Rozzers is another term
all
for
across
police.
the Midlands.
Yeah. Yeah, Rozzers is a term for police. The name, I just found it interesting where the name came from, because I always wondered. It is something I have heard quite a bit, but we hear other names for the police service in the UK. This name possibly came as a play on the founder of the London Metropolitan Police, who was Sir Robert Peel. Rozzers, Roz being a short name for Robert, so Rozzers would be the title that was given to them. And what I also thought, because I never recognised this, but a shortened term of Robert is also Bobby, and a lot of British police are called Bobbies. Bobby's on the beat. So
Bobby on the beat.
So that apparently came from Sir Robert Peel's name as well.
Yeah, and one of the other sort of shorthand names for police that from Sir Robert Peel's name that didn't make it were Peelers.
That's well, right. Yeah.
Because of his surname, but that is not one that stuck, because now we call that for easy to peel satsumas.
That's true. But really interesting that it's gone back that far. I don't know why. I never even thought about what the creation of the word Bobby is. You know, it's something I've heard very often, the Bobbies on the beat in London, you know, but I've never understood that it went all the way back to the founder of the Metropolitan Police. Another one that's in there, we have Ken, the guy who's trying to sell the ring to Dave Boy and Bazza, tries to sell it for a monkey, which is £500. As they explain later on in the episode.
Yeah, slang for £500.
Exactly, slang for £500.
A monkey.
Yeah, and that comes from the 19th century as well. Apparently it's because in 19th century India, a 500 rupee banknote had a picture of a monkey on one side of it. So as they started being used in England, with the incorporation of India, with a lot of travel between India and the UK, they started being seen by people, and everybody started calling a £500 note a monkey, based on the rupee equivalent, effectively. So I thought that was interesting.
Interesting.
Given that it's going that far back as well. So.
And a pony is £25?
In the UK, yes, it is. Yeah. I don't know where that comes from, though. I didn't
don't
research
either.
that, John.
I have no idea. A ton is 100.
100, but that's pretty obvious.
That's pretty obvious. Yeah, I don't know where a pony... Maybe that was the going rate for a pony in those days.
Maybe.
Or maybe there was a pony on one of the banknotes.
Yeah, maybe the Mauritius banknote had a pony on the side of it.
It could have been one of those things.
But there you go. That's the little translation quarter. If you noticed anything in the episodes that you don't understand, we are more than happy to look it up and tell you about it in the next episode. Let us know. Email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. I do want to call out my favourite quote from the episode in the conversation between Alfie and his dad, where Alfie's dad says, well, I could actually be alive. Just because I'm visiting you in your sleep doesn't mean I'm dead. I could actually be over in America right now, eating hamburgers on the beach. And then he flips it round going, but why would I want a minced meat sandwich?
I know.
Have you ever thought of a hamburger as a minced meat sandwich, John?
No.
That's basically what it is.
But it is, yeah, exactly.
I like it a lot. John, any other notes or quotes from the episode?
No, not from me.
Well, how would you rate it?
To be honest, I would give this 4 minced meat sandwiches out of 5. Okay. I thought this was a really good episode. Mm-hmm. I thought there was a lot to it. And I mean, of course, just with the death of Bazza being taken out by flying shrapnel from the car exploding. You know, he's been central character of Alfie's team since episode 1 of season 1. Really enjoyed this character, along with Dave Boy. And I'm really sad to see him go from the show and from being part of that team. And I really wish, you know, whilst I do wish they had kept him round for longer towards the end of the season, or just not killed him off. I think it's, you know, a really big plot change here, and I hope that it has meaning moving forward in episode 4 and beyond, whether that is to do with just the fallout personally on the death with Alfie and Dave Boy, or whether it's because, you know, a bigger plot line is exposed here than what we just simply see in this episode, around, you know, loose talk in a pub when you're drunk.
Exactly.
That it is somehow connected to Gully, possibly. Is it even more connected to the Raven Union or something else? So I think that's still to be seen, just to really pack some more oomph behind the death of Bazza here in this episode.
But I know what you mean, because right now it just feels like this could change part of the fundamental makeup of the show by losing someone like Bazza, who's you're level-headed member of this 3-person team. Does it change some of the interesting stuff that's going on in the show? You know, like it feels like there's, as we said, it feels like there's no particular reason for this that would carry on other than to give Dave Boy a storyline. And there's no problem with that. Of course, you have to give all your characters a storyline, but it feels like because it's not connected to anything else, that it's a kind of a waste to lose a major character on this side, rather than maybe, you know, losing him in the bombing of London and giving Alfie a position to take against the Raven Union. Right now, it doesn't change anything about where Alfie sits. He sits across everything. And the death of Baza is because of what happened to Dave Boy. So,
it changes the dynamic, because Baza was Alfie's sounding board. He was the reasonable one that could give him the advice or the sounding board that Alfie needed. Dave Boy, he was never that for Alfie.
Exactly.
He was another, but he had a different function in that. So he's lost that function. So it's how it moves forward, I think, it will be really interesting to see. I thought, Bet Sykes is always a little smaller amount of time in this episode, but, you know, interesting developments there with the attack on her, by, I suppose, from her point of view, Lord Harwood, but that slight sort of disagreement there, you know, or another one. It's the role of Bet Sykes in the Raven Union and her closeness to Lord Harwood, with her instability. But also, you know, we still have the Project Stormcloud that Gaunt and Harwood really don't see eye to eye. So, you know, this is another maybe fissure in that upper command.
Absolutely. And also, again, the tension that's there in that scene with Bet Sykes, where you actually don't know. I genuinely thought there was going to be a moment when Catherine came back downstairs and her friend, her former lecturer, was going to be dead on the floor, strangled to death by Beth.
Definitely.
It feels like every moment she's in the presence of somebody new, you're going, will this person survive the episode or not? He doesn't survive the episode, but it's not, it is because of Beth as well, but not at her hand, let's say. She didn't want to kill him, or she didn't kill him herself, but yeah, there's always that tension when she's in a room with somebody. Is she going to kill them for some perceived slight kind of thing? So, really, really good. Love the character once again.
I think some great setup here for Thomas and Martha, what with the death of Potter and Martha understanding Thomas's role in getting Crowley to do what he did.
They're not trying to write a storyline of how these two get together.
But I think that will come as the season progresses, and I think this is kind of laying the foundation a bit here.
But will it?
I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't look like that. But
it feels like they're writing the story of how these two should never be together.
Well, it certainly does seem that way. But, you know, again, we need to see Alfie with them. I suppose ultimately, with the death of Baza, it is probably the dissolving of that original 3-person team up to having this 3-person team up of Alfie, Thomas and Martha that develops in some way. So we kind of need to see that. So, you know, I'm really interested to see what comes from this. But I thought this was a really good episode, from the opening visuals of the mortar attack. I think some really nice work with Alfie's visions and with his dead father, but also with his mum, and of course everything else I've just mentioned. So 4 minced meat sandwiches out of 5.
Very good, very good. I do wonder now, since they've lost their 3rd member, I wonder if we will see Alfie and Dave Boy take Gully up on the job offer.
I guess so, yeah. I guess that's where that leads to, because he's lost the money, as you say.
Yeah, and Alfie's saying that he always wanted to lead himself. He said he'd never follow anybody else after he left the army. I wonder if this might change his mind. But we will see in the next episode. Thanks so much for that, John. A little bit of feedback for this episode. Got a bit of feedback from Angie Arhus over on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. Angie says, okay, so I did not watch Pennyworth when it first came out, but now that you're covering it, I was looking for a show to watch. I went back and binged the first season over the last 2 weeks, and I have to say, I love it. It's funny, quirky, and full of action. Bet Sykes is a great character. Yes, I realise that's awfully dark of me, but there it is. The scene where she kept hitting the dead guy in the first season while Aziz was looking on was just a hoot. Does that make me a terrible person?
No, it doesn't, Angie.
It doesn't, Angie. I think we're all there with you. Bet Sykes is definitely a great creation.
Yeah, she's a fantastic character, and darkly so. Really such a great character.
Definitely. And remember, this is supposed to be from the people that brought you the villains of DC. So even the dark, evil villains always have some good lines and always have some good fun in their movies and TV shows. And she continues, I also appreciate you guys having a slang corner on the podcast for us non-Brits. Even with subtitles, I didn't know what some of the terms meant. In the last episode 2 of season 2, Alfie calls a guy an oily rag. I busted out laughing, having never heard that phrase before. I'll definitely be using it should the occasion arise. Thanks for another great TV pick, guys. You've never steered me wrong. I give the show 4.5 oily rags out of 5. I love it, Angie. Brilliant. There's always some great terminology. I think the writers in this show have a great grasp of slang terminology in the UK, particularly so in South England and also Northern English slang with Bet Sykes. You get lots of really interesting call outs. So thanks so much for your feedback, Angie. As I mentioned before, if you want to send in any feedback, email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, or do what Angie did, pop over to the Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries.
Yeah, thank you, Angie, for that feedback. Really good to get your viewpoints, and certainly I'm there with you on Bet Sykes' character. She is fantastic. I'm glad we've helped introduce you to Pennyworth.
Absolutely. Yeah, great to have you with us for that. As we mentioned, episode 3 and 4 aired together on Epix as part of this mid-season finale. We will be back later this week with our thoughts on episode 4, The Hunted Fox. Pennyworth is on a break from now until next year. This is because of the break that was there in the UK for filming, just because of the lockdowns that were going on. They were able to get back to filming quite early, but as you know, with this show, there's so much work that goes into it, lots of special effects and lots of stuff to nail down. So while they have finished filming on the show, there is some production work to do. So they're taking a break. It's going to be off air until March. So we will be back later this week with episode 4, and then we'll be back in March as the season continues. Loads of other stuff going on, though. As you know, we've mentioned it before. Wonder Woman 1984 comes out in cinemas in the US on the 25th of December, which is just before you hear this episode. So if you have been able to go to the cinema and see Wonder Woman 1984, or if you've been able to watch it on HBO Max, check out our coverage of that movie of Wonder Woman 84 on tvpodcastindustries.com. We really enjoyed it. I had good fun going to the cinema for that.
Really good fun.
Before all the cinema shut down over here once again. We will also be back next month if you're looking for another comic book TV show. After we finish this half of Pennyworth, we'll be back in January with our coverage of WandaVision on Disney+.
Yes, can't wait for that. The
Marvel.
Scarlet Witch, yes, and Marvel. Yeah. And of course, leading into Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness.
You just love saying Multiverse of Madness.
Cannot wait.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for joining us. We will talk to you again later in the week, I guess.
Yeah, thanks so much, fellow governors. We will be on a short break until we come back with episode 4, The Hunted Fox. But as always, a pleasure speaking with you over this festive period on all things Pennyworth. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep brushing those teeth.
Nice. I'm off to get myself a mincemeat sandwich, John.
Yummy.
Bye.
Pickles? Bye.
Don't give up. You'll get to America in the end. This is just a small setback. They promise me you won't give up. Promise.
I swear on my mother's grave.
I want to see you boys live in the sunshine somewhere. I want to see you get fat, Alfie. And rich. And bald. And have a fat wife. And lots of fat babies.
Done, mate. Come here. Lie down. Hey. You all right?
Very comfy, thanks.
Just asking. Does a wife have to be fat?
Seriously. These are my dying words, boys. You have to do what I say.
All right. Fair play. Plump wife it is. First daughter we have, we'll name her Bazza. Hey. What about me? What should I do, eh? Anything you say, eh? Within reason.
2 things. Brush your teeth more often.
I can do that.
Tell Doris to